Hello, my name is Greg Hebner, and I'm the Warning Coordination Meteorologist for the National Weather Service office in Pueblo, Colorado. Today we're going to discuss severe weather safety across southern Colorado and a little bit about what we do at the forecast office in Pueblo, Colorado. Weather affects us every day, sometimes to the point where it could become a life-threatening situation, whether you're out and about or even at your home with your family, just kind of watching TV, doing whatever. During many times of the year, we have active weather patterns. Summertime brings us some heavy rains, flash flooding, tornadoes, large hail. Pictures you see here on the left-hand side indicate those high impact weather situations. Again, the upper left is going to be flash flooding off the Beulah burn scar in western Pueblo County. And then in the bottom left-hand side is very large hail that fell in the August 8th, 2018 hailstorm that hit Cheyenne Mountain Zoo, Fort Carson, and ultimately Fountain, Colorado. And the image on the right-hand side is the radar depiction of the storm in the bottom left of the screen. This is a severe thunderstorm that developed across really basically Pikes Peak area and basically advanced down to the southeast, again hitting Cheyenne Mountain Zoo, the Broadmoor, Fort Carson, and ultimately Fountain, Colorado. I mentioned before that high impact weather or severe weather can happen many times of the year, and any time of the year really. In this case, this is a flash flood that occurred during a heavy rain event in Austin, Texas in 2017 or 18. I forget exactly the year. Actually, it's right there. It shows you in the bottom right-hand side, 18. And basically the bus went around a barricade indicating the road was already closed due to high water basically making the road impassable. The bus decided to ignore that. The bus driver decided to ignore that with a few students on the bus as well and basically began to try to ford the river. Now, again, basically once the bus entered the water here, it was automatically or really close to almost instantaneously lifted off of the road surface and then carried downstream to where this creek was actually flowing at a relatively quick pace. The bus driver not only put themselves at risk, but the students at risk. Ultimately, the bus driver was fired from their job for sheer negligence. This is why we say turn around, don't drown, because you're not entirely sure if that road surface is still even there or how deep that water is. And therefore, if you have even a bigger vehicle, the bigger the tires, the quicker and easier it is for those vehicles to float just due to the buoyancy. So basically, really, it's never a good idea to even try to attempt to drive through a flooded roadway because, you're not sure if the road's there, and something like this can happen to you where you're swept off the road surface and then carried downstream. When it comes to the weather safety aspect of things, you would have a plan for different scenarios, such as, again, a flash flooding, hail, tornado, winter storm, even fire weather to an extent as well too, and have different ways to receive those watches and warnings. And we'll get into a little bit about what the watch and warning really means as we get a little bit farther on in this presentation. Weather radio is a really great way to have a dedicated stream of weather information pumped to a particular set-top box in your house, school, job, business, wherever it might be, even in your car. You can have a handheld one as well too, battery powered. When a warning is issued for your county, it's going to automatically turn the radio on, very, very high-pitched squeal. It kind of really gets your attention. It can wake you up in the dead of night, in the dead of sleep, to alert you the potential life-threatening situation is developing or moving towards your location, and therefore you take your life protection action at that point in time. Cell phones are also a great way to receive information. There are many, many apps that will be able to push watch or warning notifications to your phones so we have it at your disposal at all times. And even the TV is a great way too, especially if the TV broadcasters break in for a high impact weather situation. They'll tell you exactly what's going on. The only issue with the TVs is that it has to be on for it to work, obviously. If it's not on, you're never going to receive information that way. So having the phones or having the phones and the weather radio are both great ways to receive information. And again, ultimately, having these plans and having ways to receive the information therefore lets you take your protective life safety actions. Again, kind of getting into flooding once again, this was a swollen creek that was basically flowing under the road, and this giant, 5 or 6 foot diameter culvert under the road surface had gotten basically, had surpassed its capacity.
Just gonna stand back a bit yet.
And in this case, the water was so powerful, again, not moving so fast, but enough water to lift the culvert out of the road or out of the compaction area that it had been placed in with the crossing of the stream, and lifted it up, and therefore moved the asphalt away, and now you have an open pit. So now once the culvert gets swept downstream and then that road is completely covered with water, if you're driving into that and you see the water across the roadway, you might think it's safe enough to just drive through. You might think it's only a few inches deep, but in this case, the road surface is no longer there, so basically you're driving into an open pit at this point. The video you see here on the right hand side, it actually was from the Highway 50 underpass in downtown Pueblo. And I'm not entirely sure what the person in the white Prius was thinking. Everyone else has kind of stopped and checking it out and doing the right thing. And this person in the Prius decides to try to drive through the flooded roadway. And you can see it might get 10 or 15 feet from where the water's edge was. And then now the car is off the road surface and it literally is just floating. So luckily in this case, the water wasn't swift moving enough to put them at a great risk in terms of death. But at the same time, if this water was deeper and moving a little bit quicker, they could ultimately drown in it. So really most of the flooding fatalities we have, more than 60% of flood fatalities occur within vehicles by doing something like this, by trying to cross a flooded roadway. Tornadoes. Now we get quite a few of these, mostly from, say, La Junta east towards the Kansas line, but they can occur closer to the Front Range, even in parts of Pueblo itself too. It can be more of a rare situation, and usually a relatively quick, short-lived situation. We have a scale going from a 0 to a 5, with the EF standing for the Enhanced Fujita. 0 is the lowest of the scale with winds up to 85 miles per hour. 1 and 2 have winds increased from 85 up to 135 miles per hour. So basically, the EF0, EF1s, possibly even the EF2s account for more than 95% of the tornadoes we have here in southern Colorado. And as you go up the scale, the winds increase dramatically and the damage increases exponentially. We've never had a confirmed EF5, which is basically the biggest. Sometimes it could be upwards of a mile or two wide or diameter storm or tornado, basically eating everything in its path. Have never had a confirmed EF5 in Colorado, but we've had several EF3s and a couple of EF4s in the past 20 to 30 years. In this case, this was an EF4 from 2013 in Washington, Illinois. I want to talk a little bit about the safety as far as where you should go within your home itself. I'm actually going to let this video play a little bit so you can see exactly how much risk this videographer, is taking while standing outside filming this tornado coming towards them. Again, this is a relatively large tornado. And again, after the tornado passed through, we go out and do assessments, and that's how we give the rating curve, again from the 0 to a 5, based off how much damage occurred and what kind of damage occurred, whether it was telephone poles snapped in half, houses completely off the slab's completely clean of any housing material left. That's a tremendous amount of force, tremendous amount of wind to be able to knock a house off its slab and leave, say, just a basement or literally just the slab itself. So you can see here in this video some of the debris from other homes around the tornado are being lofted into the air, and that tornado debris can act as projectiles. So if something in your house, for instance, doesn't fall on you and kill you, the debris here, again, projectiles, can impale you. And again, that's why we say we want to get to a very, very safe location during a tornado, even if it's a weak tornado with the EF0 scale, because even those can produce some kind of damage. And winds of 90 miles an hour or 85, 90 miles an hour are nothing to to laugh about. They are still very, very strong, even if as short-lived as they are, but they can definitely launch projectiles, which could ultimately harm your body. And see, the tornado is now upon this person, and they're trying to scramble inside the house. Um, I think luckily they were able to survive, but still they put themselves in a really, really, really bad spot with this massive tornado coming towards them. So have a plan. Again, you have a plan, you want to practice that plan. Where are you going to go? If you get a warning or if you see a visual confirmation that a tornado is moving towards you, where are you going to go? If you have a basement, perfect place to go. Underground at all possible. If you live on a slab, well, then you want to try to get into an interior hallway closet or an interior bathroom with as few windows as possible. You put as many walls between you and the outside world as possible to enhance your safety during a tornado threat. If you're wearing flip-flops and you start to walk around in the debris field that, say, was your home or wherever, or was your school or whatever it might be, potential exists for continued harm to your body by stepping on, again, broken glass, nails, could be rusty nails, or even screws, or even giant wood splinters that could easily come through your soft-soled shoes. Lowest level of the house is the safest place to be if you have one of those. Again, so basically the image here on the left-hand side shows the entire upper floors of the house were wiped off of the foundation. The only thing left was basically the basement. Underground surface was the only thing that was left on this tornado here. On the right-hand side, the kid standing there in the picture, that is literally where he stood during a massive EF4 tornado in Oklahoma. This is how he survived the tornado. He had no basement to get into, basically a slab foundation. That interior hallway closet he stood in literally saved his life. He knew exactly where to go. Now granted, it's Oklahoma. They get a lot more tornadoes, a lot more devastating tornadoes, so they have more practice at it. The plans are pretty robust. What I'm really trying to tell you to do is just kind of have those plans in place and know exactly where you're going to go, because you don't want to have to wait until the last second to get someplace or figure out where you're going to go. You already should know where you're going to go. So when that warning is issued or you have confirmation of the tornado moving towards you, you put that plan into action. And being outside as well. Again, these things can happen on a clear day, and all of a sudden weather changes drastically, like it does here in Colorado quite often. In this case, this is a little, say, gustnado, not associated with a thunderstorm whatsoever, just really, really strong winds from a decaying thunderstorm somewhere else. Created a little spin up and began to launch porta potties this is actually up in Denver from a couple of years ago. So outside is not a good place to be. If you're stuck outside, if you have no other place to go, you want to try to get as low to the ground as possible and basically spread out. Make yourself as low of a profile as possible. That way the wind can't really get up underneath of you and lift you off of the grass. So basically on the ground, preferably on your belly, hands over your head, or even spread eagle. Those are really two good ways for you to be if you're outside. If you're in a mobile home, again, not a great place to be. Even if the home is anchored to the ground, it's still not great. This homes roll relatively easily. We've seen winds only as high as 60 miles an hour, maybe 70 miles an hour, roll an anchored mobile home. So again, not a good place to be. And here, this is a relatively very, very quick, lasted no more than like 5 to 10 seconds of a very, very small, maybe 2 or 3 yard wide tornado that just developed, moved through this neighborhood, lifted up that car, turned it, lifted up the trailer as well and turned it. So you can see how little force it takes to have something like this happen. And that's why cars aren't really the best places either, because those cars, again, like in this case, say winds only up to 70 miles an hour, lifted it up. If that tree wasn't there, that car could easily have rolled a few times. And if you're inside of that, then you're also rolling with the car. So the best case, if you're in a vehicle, try to drive to a shelter immediately. There aren't really a lot of shelters to drive to designated for tornado shelters in southern Colorado. Maybe way out east, again, towards the Kansas state line, there might be a few, but in general, there's not really a lot of designated tornado shelters in southern Colorado. So, if you're driving, if you can outrun it, great. Sometimes these storms can move upwards of 70 miles an hour themselves. So even if you're on I-25, you're not really going to be outpacing it too much. So you want to try to get off the exit or try to get off the road in general and try to seek a stronger shelter. Again, whether it's a building, a convenience store. People got into the freezers of convenience stores before and survived tornadoes. Whatever you have to do, that's the best case scenario. The worst case is that if you have nowhere else to go and there's literally just flat land all around, again, you get out, like I said before, and you lie down, put your hands over your head, and basically spread eagle across the ground surface. One issue is that some of the debris that's being picked up, maybe even your car, could also be rolled on top of you as you're laying in the field, an open field. If you can find a ditch, get into the ditch, which is great too, as a last resort. The only issue with the ditches is sometimes they're full of other critters, snakes, spiders, sometimes poisonous or venomous, whatever it might be. Sometimes those ditches, or even gullies, people call them, can be filled with water as well too. So, and they're also exposed to flying debris at that point too. So there really aren't a lot of good options for you if you're out driving in your vehicle and you encounter a tornado. Again, the best option is to pull off the road and try to get into a sturdier shelter. And please, whatever you do not decide to just pull over on the shoulder or pull over under an overpass, as many other vehicles are trying to flee or get to safe places. This happened several times down in the Oklahoma area, and this is one particular one in 2015. A tornado was approaching I-35 heading into Oklahoma City, and people decided to use the overpass as shelter from the tornado potential as well as the hail potential that was falling. And it basically created a huge traffic jam. So people aren't able to freely move through that corridor any longer, and again, to get to a safe place. Because people parked under the overpass protect themselves and their vehicles, they put hundreds of other lives at risk as well too. So again, you don't want to ever do this. You don't want to just stop on an interstate anywhere under an overpass because your vehicle might get damaged and you might get hurt. And again, you want to try to get someplace where you have a sturdier shelter. Severe wind happens way more frequently than tornadoes do in southern Colorado. We've had winds with thunderstorms gusting up to 85, 90 miles an hour. So again, mimicking that EF0, EF1 scale. The only difference between these winds and tornadic winds is the way or the orientation to which the damage is laid down or distributed. With a severe wind from a thunderstorm, call them straight line winds, all the debris is blown in one direction. With a tornado, all the debris typically becomes more scattered and sporadic, and as the tornado is moving along, you actually can see some debris converging into almost like a single line. And so basically it's very chaotic all around it. As the tornado is moving through an area and damaging homes or businesses or cars, whatever it might be, some of the debris actually has more of like a confluent kind of flow orientation to it, actually marking the path of the tornado. Lightning happens with every thunderstorm, hence the thunder part of it. So lightning is the electrical discharge within the atmosphere as it basically builds up a static electricity charge like you would if you rubbed your feet on the carpet and touched a metal object. In a relatively dry climate like we have here, it happens quite frequently in the fall through early spring months. Well, lightning again is the release of that energy towards the Earth's surface. And in this case, this is called a CG or cloud, the ground bolt of lightning. Struck the tallest object around, which happened to be that light stand at a high school football game. I'm not entirely sure where that video was taken, but it showed you hundreds of people exposed, an open area, and sitting on metal bleachers, which easily could have been struck by lightning at that given time, and therefore, that's basically game over. That's no pun intended, literally a game over at that point. Simple saying goes, if thunder roars, go indoors. Basically, thunder is the storm's warning system saying, like, hey, I'm close enough for you to be struck by lightning. Get inside. Lightning can strike up to 10 to 15 miles away from the thunderstorm itself. Again, if you are close enough to hear the thunder, you are close enough to be struck by the bolt of lightning. In this case, sheltering under a tree is not a good idea. The trees typically tend to be some of the larger or taller objects across the area, especially the farther east you go. There's not really a lot of really tall objects out there, so trees tend to be that, and that's the easiest path of least resistance for the lightning to take, from the cloud down to the ground. The trees also have a bunch of roots that go into the ground, and the roots are full of water. So as lightning hits the top of the tree, it enters into the trunk of it while the water is, and basically the water acts as a natural plumbing down towards the Earth's surface into the ground. And even if you're standing, say, just away from the canopy of the tree, some of those roots could be right under your feet. And again, that electrical discharge or electricity will be coming through the root system into the ground and possibly even into your lower extremities here. And the picture you see there on the left-hand side is actually from a golf course. This is where they have one of their flags, one of their pins standing. Lightning hit that pin and then branched out in all directions through the root systems that were in place there, by the grass and that kind of stuff. The grass has since been resodded at this point. Hail, this is our most common threat in southern Colorado, except for lightning. So hail, we get a lot of hail here just due to our elevation and due to the way that the storms move off the mountains. There's a lot of hail that can occur in southern Colorado. Again, mostly through the May, basically from May through early to mid-August. And the hail can reach upwards of 2 to 3 inch diameter. So again, you're talking about a baseball, soft, grapefruit sized hail falling from the sky. And it's not just, kind of floating down. There's a lot of weight to that. So basically the hail is falling at anywhere from 80 to 90 miles an hour as well. In this case here, on the picture on the upper left-hand corner, you see basically that siding, whether it was hardy board, cement siding, or just vinyl siding, whatever it might be, basically looks like a shotgun went off and hit the side of the house, and, broke all the windows out. Basically, that's being hail, say inch diameter or larger is what we consider severe hail. So any hail of any size, once you get an inch or larger, can do this kind of damage. It's just being blown into a house by strong, severe thunderstorm winds. Again, anywhere from 60 to maybe even 90 miles an hour. So you have the winds producing damage, as well as the hail causing havoc. And as we're heading into the fall and the winter months here, blizzards are also another huge issue we have to deal with here. They don't happen all that often, maybe 2 or 3 any given winter, but still, in this case, this is from the bomb cyclone back in March of 2019 up in Falcon. And you can see basically a near whiteout. A little bit of snow with very strong winds can produce these whiteout or near whiteout conditions, which is very disorienting. If you're outside, you get stuck outside, you can't find your way back to your house. Unfortunately, we did have one fatality, one direct fatality with the storm. And in that case, the gentleman went outside to start his generator as he lost power. This is up in, I think, the Peyton area, if I believe. And winds were blowing so hard, so much snow around that he could not find his way back to his house. And unfortunately, he collapsed due to hypothermia, and then that's how he perished. And when they found him about 18 to 24 hours later, he was literally about 10 feet from his house, from his front door of his trailer house. So again, he was so close, but he couldn't see it because of how crazy, chaotic the situation was with all the blowing snow and the whiteout conditions, and he basically got disoriented. And in the picture in the upper the upper left is from that same storm. This is I-25 up near the Monument Hill area, the Baptist Road area. And again, stranded vehicles because they couldn't get up the road surface there due to the icy conditions, and all the snow and the wind were blowing around, so people got stranded. We had over 1,500 motorists stranded during this one particular storm, just in Colorado Springs alone, because they got caught off guard. They left work or left school too late in the afternoon, and a couple of people might have some accidents. Traffic started backing up, and then the blizzard really took over, hit full force, and people were out there for 18 hours just in their vehicles alone, just trying to survive. Now, what we do, again, we issue all those watches and warnings for all the weather events we just talked about. Again, we are stationed about a mile west of the Pueblo Memorial Airport runway, the tower as well. And we are staffed with about 23 to 24 dedicated meteorologists and technicians to help work on our equipment. We issue all the watches, warnings, and forecasts for 21 counties of southern Colorado. And we are there 24/7, 365. This is a picture of our staff from a couple of years ago. We've had a couple changes to this picture, but for the most part, the main core you see here is still there. We have 4 managers, supervisors listed there in the top on the left-hand side, running the office, running different operations, running the science division, running the outreach, which is what I do. My title is the Warning Coordination Meteorologist, so I do a lot of this public education outreach, and I do a lot of liaison work with the emergency management and the media community across southern Colorado. Under that, we have all of our forecasters. We have 15 or so forecasters that are working rotating shifts, and again, sending out all those watches, warnings, and forecasts. Again, ultimate mission is protection of life and property. So we basically take that mission very, very seriously. So we do every day, and every minute of every day, we're working towards making your decisions as far as weather goes easier, and alerting you to when it becomes really, really bad and you start taking your life protection actions. For those interested in possibly pursuing a career in meteorology, I must say it is a very, very rigorous program. It's a lot of math and a lot of physics. So if it's not your forte, I can't say I'm going to dissuade you, but you really have to be dedicated to learning the math and physics that we try to model and try to basically map our atmosphere using the upper level calculus and physics. Basically, the atmosphere is a fluid, so we try to model that fluid dynamically across really the entire globe. I struggled when I was in college with some of the math, but I wasn't gonna let me beat me down. So maybe I'm a better example of someone who just really, really wanted it. I was never gifted with the strong math background. I was decent at it, but I just really wanted to pursue this career. So I really spent a lot of time learning it, and I think I'm a good example of someone who just wants it enough that I was able to put it into action and get it done. But again, I really did struggle. I was a solid C math student in college. So again, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We have 3 different shifts with at least two meteorologists, 2 forecasters on at any given time. Our day shift is at 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. and our evening crew comes in for a brief a little before 4 p.m. They work till midnight. And then our overnight crew comes in a little before midnight and works till 8 a.m. the next morning. And just kind of rotate through that over and over and over again. The scheduling is a little tough on the body. We do change these hours, these shifts every week. So for instance, I'm working a day shift this week. Next week I'm working an evening shift, and the following week I'm working 4 to 5 overnight shifts, and just constantly rotate through that over and over and over again. And obviously you do get days off because we do have a staff that's able to fill in on weekends as well too. So it's not like you don't get any time off, but it can be a grind at times. And again, we issue all the watches and warnings in southern Colorado for the tornadoes, severe thunderstorms, floods, winter storms, fire, weather as well too. Now, I mentioned earlier that I was going to talk about a watch versus a warning. It's always a big issue. People don't understand exactly what a watch versus what a warning is. A watch, in this case, this is a severe thunderstorm watch for a pretty good chunk of our territory in southern and southeastern Colorado. In this case, severe thunderstorm watch is issued usually 2 to 6 hours ahead of when storms begin to really develop that may produce severe weather in terms of large hail, damaging winds, and even tornadoes. Now we have a storm prediction center down in Norman, Oklahoma that is actually issuing these watches. They're the experts when it comes to thunderstorm forecasting across the world. They'll coordinate with our office in terms of placement of the watches and the timing of watches and when storms might get going. Basically, all we're doing is relaying those watches on to the general public and to the media to say, hey, heads up, in the next handful of hours, you might start to see some storms, bubble and produce potentially large damaging hail, damaging winds, and even tornadoes. Now, a warning is when conditions went from more favorable to now it's imminent, now it's occurring. So a storm is developed, we think it's producing a tornado, or producing large hail, or even damaging winds, or even all three. So then our office in Pueblo will put a warning out on that storm, maybe covering one or two counties tops, or maybe even one, it depends on how big the storm is and how fast it's moving. But covering a much smaller area than the watch did. And this is when you want to take your life protection actions. Get into your storm shelter, or get under that table, or get into your basement, or that closet, or wherever it might be. So the warning is when it's imminent, it's coming your way, take action right now. The watch is saying, hey, it's favorable, so get ready for potential storms to develop in the next couple of hours. In this case, the image there right in the middle is of a severe thunderstorm warning, not in our area because there's water around it. So this is actually up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Just wanted to show you really the orientation of a particular storm. And in this case, we have a storm moving through parts of the east of, well, I guess it is west of Milwaukee. I can't read the map too well. I apologize. Moving towards the lake there. Basically, the warning is a lot smaller, covering maybe just one or two counties, like I mentioned before. And this is one's being issued for severe wind gusts up to 60 miles an hour. Now, a wind gust criteria for issuing a tornado or severe thunderstorm warning is 58 miles an hour or stronger, and hail 1 inch diameter or larger. Again, when the warning goes out, it hits the weather radio system, hits the TV, hits your cell phone system, depending on what kind of app you're using to have information pushed to you, saying, hey, now take action, get to safe shelter. Tornado warning can be either radar indicated or something has actually been observed and reported. Again, the warning part is what's most important. This is when the warning comes out, you take action. You don't go look for it, you don't try to confirm it yourself. You say, okay, either it's indicated or someone else has already reported it. Now I need to get into my safe place, safe shelter. And then a flash flood warning. We have a rapid rise of creeks or streams, as you saw in the video before with the bus driving through. That basically was a low water crossing across a little creek that got inundated and started flooding like crazy. Again, some of those roads can be washed out and passable. One of the big things here in southern Colorado are going to be flash flooding off of our burn scars. We have several burn scars across the region, and basically the heat of the fire basically chars the ground so much that it becomes almost like concrete or asphalt. So the water isn't able to be absorbed into the subsurface layer of the soil any longer. So basically it runs off into a stream or a creek or even down a road. Because the water can't be absorbed, it becomes hydrophobic. Basically, it repels water. That's one of the things that a lot of places across the West are dealing with. Basically, once you get from us eastward, the terrain doesn't really play much of an influence in terms of burn scars. So it's just kind of a very, very common thing we have here in the Intermountain West and even on the West Coast is a post-wildfire burn scar. And the scars can take anywhere from 5 to 10 years to heal. This video is of that particular event back in August of 2018. The gentleman you see here, Bill, is actually the one issuing the warnings for that very large hail that hit the Cheyenne Mountain Zoo, again, Fort Carson, Broadmoor, and then ultimately they said Fountain, Colorado. So basically the office is buzzing pretty good. We have the TVs on, we're watching the broadcast met, seeing what they're saying, helping communicate with them as far as potential areas of impact. Several eyes, people watching radar. Really, it's a giant team effort. But ultimately, it comes down to communication within the office. So basically, the person I showed you, Bill, here, is communicating. He's watching the radar satellite data coming in, and he's the one pulling the trigger on the warnings again to alert those downstream of that storm that hey, this hail is maybe baseball-sized hail coming towards you. Get inside. Get somewhere that's really safe, away from windows. So let's play a little bit longer. Another advantage point of the same situation, what's kind of neat though is this gentleman here, the one on the far left, is actually he's the director of our agency, and he happened to be just in town to talk to us that morning about some big initiative that we have as an agency, across the country. He got a front row seat to his first ever office environment when they're issuing severe thunderstorm and tornado warnings. He'd never experienced it in his career, so this is a first taste of what he was seeing was our mission statement being put into action, protection of life and property, and this is a prime example of that taking place. Again, everyone's doing a particular job, whether it's still issuing forecasts the next couple of days, whether it's communicating with the media, being a second set of eyes on radar, make sure nothing's missed, or actually issuing the warnings that go out mass broadcast, again, for protection of life and property. Now, ways to receive warnings. I mentioned this a little bit earlier on in the presentation, but again, there are several ways that you can receive them, and we always recommend having more than one way in case your primary way fails. So mobile apps, you have the FEMA app, you have a Red Cross app that you can program locations anywhere across the country, particularly your home location, and maybe a few others, maybe where relatives live or vacation house, wherever it might be, that will push warnings and alerts to you automatically. The wireless emergency alert, or known as WIA, again, will only trigger if there's a tornado warning, a flash flood warning, or a snow squall warning. Now, a snow squall warning is like a mini blizzard. Basically, it only lasts maybe 30 minutes tops. Basically, it's like a giant wall of snow coming at you, blowing really hard, reduces visibility, say you're below a quarter mile or even less, and then it's basically done. It moves through just as quickly. That's a snow squall warning. So again, those will go across on the wireless emergency alert system. Weather radio, again, is a dedicated set-top box you can put someplace in your house, in your business, in your school that gets good reception. We have towers all across southern Colorado that's constantly broadcasting weather information. Again, when a watch or warning are issued for a particular county, it'll automatically turn the radio on, very, very loud, audible beep, and to alert you, and then it'll actually start playing the message itself, which would basically be severe thunderstorm watch, tornado warning, flash flood warning, whatever it might be. Again, to kind of give you a heads up saying, hey, this is happening right now. Start putting your plans into action. Outdoor warning sirens are only good if you're outside. If it's the middle of the night and you're inside sleeping, you're probably not going to hear it. Again, there aren't really a lot of warning sirens across the state. Farther east, again, more so in the Tornado Alley, yes. But here, closer to Pueblo, not really. But again, they only work if you're outside. And also we have a couple apps that we use too, our particular social media apps, both on Facebook as well as Twitter. We're starting to develop more of an Insta presence as well too in the coming future too. But again, if you're going to receive information when it comes to high impact weather, again, recommend having an app on your phone, Red Cross or FEMA, both free, and even a weather radio too. So now one last thing before we conclude today. I've told you a lot about the kind of weather that could possibly impact or even harm you, any time of the year here in southern Colorado. That's great. I could talk to them blue in the face. However, it really is incumbent upon you to then take that information and then pass it on and then actually use it, apply it, and get to your safe places. Also, if you're new to the area, if you're coming from out of state, know exactly where you're located on a map. That's geography is a very important thing because we're indicating a potential high impact weather situation. As they move from Pueblo west, towards the southeast, towards the college, and even off, say maybe out towards the Hunter, whatever it might be. Knowing where you're located on that map is highly important to you. So I really appreciate everyone's time today. I thank you for just following along today, and Leanne, thank you for having me. And I've been taking any questions as they might come in. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.